A rematch between Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz is super unnecessary. Of course, the master of violence will tell you otherwise, because in his mind, his work of art is unfinished. Gamebred will never be truly satisfied of what happened at UFC 244, because the ultimate conclusion fighters and fans so desperately crave was taken away by a doctor who was just doing his job. But if you still feel like you haven't seen the full story, maybe this video can bring you a little bit of peace. The fight starts. Right out the gate, we fully understand why this is for the BMF title. Nate knows what's coming and taunts Jorge, who applauds him and smiles. The preparation from both guys was clearly on point. As anybody would expect, Nate closes the distance. This is how he wins most of his fights. Pace, pressure, forward. But Masvidal doesn't allow it. Roberto Duran, his idol, told him before the fight he couldn't back up against Nate, and Jorge followed his advice brilliantly, even though that was probably his coach's game plan anyway. Almost every time Nate was coming in, Gamebred made him pay. Because if you back up all the time against a guy like Diaz, you fall right into his game, and before you know it, your lungs are on fire. A lot of guys will be hesitant to throw hands when Nate advances, because the clinch is almost inevitable, and the clinch is what Diaz wants to tire you out. So it's very easy to fall into his game, but not for a master with a calculated violence plan. Look at this. Nate grabs Jorge. Masvidal doesn't fight out of the clinch. Instead, he uses his energy efficiently, focuses on positioning, reverses the momentum of Nate, pushes him back while moving his right hand to dig both underhooks. He puts his hands together for the body lock and boom, starts landing knees. Nate has to do something about it, and that position right there is crucial. Because that's how Jorge was countering a huge part of Nate's game plan. Instead of burning himself out to get out of the clinch, Masvidal used minimal energy and optimal technique to find his opportunities. And because of that fact, Jorge could still explode at any moment. A little bit like another master of violence. But MMA isn't just violence, you also need balance. And every single aspect of this fight was balanced for Jorge Masvidal.
I knew that if he could take it in the chin, we'll weaken up the body and then the chin will go.
That process leads to a violent elbow that could have ended weaker chins. Nate, of course, survives and retreats. He's not ready to get baptized, as he has never been. Masvidal explodes, sensing the finish. He's not holding back, and that's where his legendary instinct comes into play. He observed Nate's reaction to his right hand. Because of his instinct and his preparation, Jorge knows where Diaz's head is gonna be if he feints the right. He smells the blood from a mile away, feints the right, brutal head kick right behind it. Nate ducks into the shot, probably even more than Jorge expected him to. And ironically, that saves him from the worst. He manages to get his shoulder on Jorge's leg before the kick lands, and that significantly reduces the impact. It's still a very clean kick that opens up a cut, but it could have been much more dangerous. Nate's chin is really something else. No fighter in the world reacts better to a mild concussion. While falling down, he protects his head with both hands, and as soon as he senses Jorge's punch fly by, he rolls to his back and stops shelling up to have a better view of what's going on. Nate, under massive pressure, is one of the smartest fighters of all time. A split second after the kick, Diaz is fully conscious. He rolls to his left side and protects himself with his right hand. That way he can protect his whole head with one hand only. But why isn't he using both hands? Where's his left hand? Sneaky, sneaky. It might not seem like much, but imagine you're Jorge Masvidal in that position. What can you do here? Body punches maybe? Nothing too damaging anyway. Great defensive strategy. Jorge isn't the kind of guy to give up, and he tries to open up some targets, but after a while, he smartly invites Nate back to his feet. A thing all violence masters have in common is unpredictability. With Jorge, you never know where the violence will be coming from. He starts his attacks with the same movement, but the attacks always change. A right hand, a high kick, a body shot, a feint, a body kick. It all starts with the same subtle movement, and Jorge makes his choice depending on Nate's reaction. That incredible deceptive style was the main reason why this fight was so one-sided. Here's an example. Jorge starts his move. Nate reacts to the right hand threat and slips on the outside. The target is created and identified. Jorge pulls the trigger and the body kick lands brutally. Every time Jorge made that move, an opening was created, and he was able to explode quite often because of his efficient clinch. Nate grabs the leg, Jorge digs underhooks, conserves his energy, gets the body lock, and he always gets out without gassing himself out, because Nate has to defend himself and Jorge can get out when Nate does so. Nate Diaz didn't have a lot of success in this fight. The only times he did have some was when he was closing the distance with looping punches, but Jorge could slip most of them pretty easily, and he was replying when he couldn't circle out of the way. But when he could circle, he did, a little bit like his fight with Till. Nate just didn't have an answer. And by the way, Masvidal was having so much fun in there. In the orthodox stance, he was decimating Nate. In the southpaw stance, he made Nate very hesitant. When Nate was shelling up at close range, there was a gap for a huge left hook to the body. It's a very damaging strike. When Nate was protecting his head, he was going to the body. When Nate was protecting his body, he was going to the head. In the stand-up and in the clinch, doesn't matter. So, we've analyzed the reasons why this fight was so one-sided, but so far nothing proves that a rematch wouldn't go differently.